Hello and welcome to Gardening at 58 North. So in this video I'd like to start a new video series. So it'll be a little bit different to my normal videos, which tend to be how-to videos or they're just videos about my plants. This is more about sustainability and growing food for yourself. There's a lot of crises going on in the world at the moment, and the food prices and energy prices seem to be soaring. So I thought this would be a good time to give you a kind of a diary of how me and my family grow vegetables. We've been doing it for years, and this garden is just about self-sufficient in vegetables, but we'll be trying to grow a few extra this year. And with the food prices increasing, I'm just a bit worried about how much things will cost, and I think people might be interested if they want to grow their own vegetables, and might be interested and see how I do it, and I can give some tips along the way. So this is a new series I'll be starting. I'm starting it now at the beginning of March. I'll be hopefully filming every month throughout the season, just showing you how we do things here and giving you a general idea of the garden that we've got here and all the vegetables that we grow. So basically we're in North Scotland, so the climate isn't particularly good. It's a very windy site here. You can see the wind at the moment. This eucalyptus tree has been stripped of all its leaves. There should be an evergreen tree, but we are about 100 meters away from the sea. It's just over in that direction on top of a cliff, so we get really bad salt spray and strong winds, and basically the wind is the biggest issue here. But also we have quite low temperatures here in Scotland, so growing food can be a little bit of a challenge. We have to get everything started extra early to make the most of the short season, and we have to keep things quite well sheltered as well. So in this video I'm just going to give you a quick introduction to the site, and also I'll be starting to sow some of the seeds in the polytunnel today, get everything ready for the summer. And if you want to find out more about this garden, I have done a video about how self-sufficient it is, and I'll put a link in now. Basically most years my parents can grow more than enough vegetables for the entire year. There are a few months of the year when they're having to use vegetables bought from the shops, but generally in summer there's a big surplus they can give away to friends and neighbours. They also use freezers and chest freezers to store most of the excess crop in summer and then use it over winter. So vegetable wise this is pretty much self-sufficient. We obviously don't have any meat or dairy or anything like that in this garden, but vegetables and plants definitely. So this is the main vegetable site. As you can see, despite the shelter we tried to grow, it is quite windy. There is a row of willow you can see there, which are currently bare. They'll be leafing up in spring, so this is a bit more sheltered in springtime. And we've done everything we can to increase the shelter, so we've got like a leylandi hedge at the back there, the polytunnel on the western side of the garden to protect from the predominant westerly winds, and we also have various other shrubs and hedges to try and reduce the wind level here. But when it comes to summer it's not quite as windy as it is now, but it can still be a big issue. So what we have is we have 4 beds. These are done in rotation to keep down on pests and diseases. So the one at the back this year was potatoes, then this was the brassica bed, then this was the beans and peas, and then we had onions and alliums at the back. The beans and peas, they often have some of the salad crops as well, just because we don't have space for them all. You can actually see there's a bit of perennial rocket here. The perennial rocket, coincidentally in my garden, is looking quite nice and green and healthy, but here it's been absolutely devastated by the winds. So this vegetable plot is a decent size and it's quite a lot of work, but it does produce a lot of crop. In the brassica section, my dad's just taken down the netting and the framework, but these posts were originally to hold up the frame for a brassica cage. We get a lot of pests, mainly the cabbage white butterfly. It lays its eggs on the brassicas and the caterpillars absolutely devastate the crop. And we also have pigeons as well, so that we have to have all our brassicas in cages. And brassicas are basically like broccoli, kale, cauliflower, anything in that family. So you can see we've got some kale left over, a few Brussels sprout plants as well, and some purple sprouting broccoli. But this was pretty well planted for most of the winter, and we've just been slowly harvesting all the winter kale crops. And then this is this year's onions that have just gone in. If we go over here, you'll see this is the previous year's potato patch, and we've actually harvested half of it, so we've still got that half to harvest. We need to harvest that before spring and then store it in a shed. We've got a stone building which has 1 meter thick walls and is slightly lower than the ground level, so it keeps the cold quite well. That's where we keep our potatoes. And then, as I say, the other crops are pretty empty at the moment because of the time of year and the wind. It's hard to overwinter anything. We do have some spinach over there, but not a huge amount. So we have to grow a lot inside cages for the brassicas, but we also have to do a lot inside protected polythene or in greenhouses. We actually have a 3rd greenhouse which will be going up later this year. So because it's so cold in our climate, we can't grow anything outside that likes warm weather, so anything like tomatoes, peppers, aubergine, butternut squash or corn or sweet corn. That all has to be grown indoors because it's too cold here. And we would also like to grow a few winter crops inside the polytunnel because it's sheltered, but we're so far north, the light levels are so low in winter that there's only a few hours of daylight each day, and even then the sun is so low, even though the houses are quite a distance over there, the sun's actually behind the houses, and there's not really any direct sun that hits the polytunnel. So we've tried in the past, there's just not enough daylight, so what we tend to do is get a quick crop in spring. But I'll give you a quick tour of the greenhouse. This greenhouse is quite a useful one, south-facing. This tends to get hotter than the polytunnel, but it also gets colder at night, so we use it for crops that like a slightly drier environment and higher temperature swings. At the moment it's pretty devastated by the storms. We had 100-mile-an-hour winds recently and it's ripped out a lot of the glass, so we need to get that fixed. And that's why we've got the netting on it, because when the glass does come out, when it's 100-mile-an-hour winds, that will just whip over the road and it can just fly tens of meters, and we don't want that hitting anyone. So that's why it's all bolted down with netting, so when the panels do pop out, they hit the netting and then they just fall inside the greenhouse instead of actually decapitating anyone or flying off. So I'll show you the polytunnel now. The polytunnel is a decent length. I can't remember off the top of my head how long it is. I think it's about 15 meters, maybe 10 meters, something like that. And it's quite a wide one as well. We did go for an extra strong polytunnel, so I'll show you a few of the features that we've had to go for to just make sure it's extra strong. So what we've done is, for a slightly stronger polytunnel, the actual gauge of the metal is a tiny bit thicker than normal, but not much. The main differences are the spacing between the actual hoops. You can see here the spacings are a lot narrower than your average polytunnel. What we've also done to strengthen it is we've got extra crop bars along the top there to strengthen it, and we've gone for all the crossbars and the extra bracing. So this can survive 100-mile-an-hour winds, probably even faster than that, to be honest. But if we just went for a normal polytunnel, it probably would have been devastated by the winds by now. So the polytunnel doubles up as like a potting shed, to be honest. So we've got two sections. This front section, which to be honest, maybe the potting shed kind of section should be at the back because this is the south side, but it's just the way we've made it. This is where all the potting up happens. So I haven't got anything on the go now, really. The only thing I've got so far is the leeks, because they need to be started very early, and I've got some sweet peas and also got some honesty plants. These are just last year's stock that was never planted out, so these brassicas will be removed quite soon. So at the front here we've got the potting bench. I've actually made a video about this, so I can put a link in if you want to see more about that. But basically we've got pot storage underneath, pull out storage for the pots here as well. It's just made from old recycled wood. And then we've got a compost hopper as well, so I can just gather the compost, do all the repotting, and we've got all the work surfaces. I've got some of the seeds laid out already. I would say 99% or almost 100% of everything we grow is done from seed. It's just so much cheaper. If you were to buy small plants, unless it's a big plant, maybe like a butternut squash, then it just doesn't really work out much cheaper than buying food from the grocery shops. So we do everything from seed, and I'll be doing extra this year, hopefully. Just because the price of everything seems to be going up so much with all the crises that are going on in the world right now. So I'll try and grow a little bit extra this year, and I might even put some of the plants into my garden. So I'll show you the polytunnel. There is a heating system. I won't go into it too much in this video, so the video doesn't get too long, but I've done a separate video on that and I can link that in. But basically there's some tubing that goes around the whole floor of the polytunnel. It starts here, there's a strong fan that blows the air down, it comes down, it's about a meter deep, just a bit less than a meter because we have very shallow groundwater here. It then comes up, loops around there, it then loops twice around a large tank in this area, and that's full of water as a thermal store, and then the air comes out of that grate there. So I've turned it off at the moment so it's a bit easier to hear, but that just helps to thermoregulate the place, so it keeps the highest temperatures down a little bit and it doesn't let it get quite as cold at night. So we are quite a mild location here, although we're in far north Scotland. My parents' garden is just a few hundred meters, or probably 100 meters away from the sea, so they don't get very hard frosts here. So with this setup, it's very rare that we get any frost in this polytunnel. If we do, it'll just be very light for 1 or 2 nights of the year. So it's normally frost free, but we still can't plant tropical plants in here until about April time, just because the night temperatures will still go down to about 5 degrees, and anything below 12 for things like tomatoes and peppers just tends to stress them. So to remedy that, what we do, we have a lot of propagators to get things started in the house, but once they're finished, it then goes into this mini greenhouse within the polytunnel, and I have a small heater at the bottom there, which is on a timer, so it turns on every night, and that just keeps the whole thing slightly warm, and then during the day the sunlight does the rest and warms it up as a mini greenhouse. So that's where all the tropicals will go later on in the year. I'll be starting them probably about late March, early April, so they can go in here for April time and then be planted in the actual polytunnel around about late April, maybe early May. And the polytunnel itself, as you can see, there's three main large beds. The central pit here is actually sunken for keeping things like tomatoes and that a little bit warmer. What we do is we put some polycarbonate panels on the top of that, and it just acts like a mini greenhouse. And because it's surrounded by bricks, it stores the heat of the day. And that was something we used quite a bit. We don't really use it much now because this mini greenhouse over here does actually a better job now, so we tend to use a mini greenhouse more. But that was just a quick, easy way of doing it before we had that. And with the beds, we basically got loads of strawberries up in this top section. We've also got a lot of strawberries up in this area as well. We kind of used an old wheelbarrow as a planter there. And then the rest of it is normally a mixture of tomatoes, butternut squash and peppers. Now the last few years our tomato crops have been getting worse and worse. We've been getting more and more blight. So this year we're not going to have any tomatoes in here and try and destroy the cycle of blight reinfecting everything. So this year it's going to be a lot of peppers and a few other things. Oh, and we also have sweet corn in the middle bed where it's slightly higher. So the tomatoes will be going in the greenhouse, and probably the new greenhouse as well this year. I'll be growing slightly less than normal. But this is basically the setup for the polytunnel. We have actually got a small crop started over here. We've got some lettuce in this section mixed in with some radish. There's radish mixed in the whole bed. We're supposed to have some rocket in here, but it was old seeds and I'm not sure they've germinated. All I can see is the radish. And over here I planted lots of perpetual spinach, this type of Swiss chard, and unfortunately something went and ate all the seeds. So I've resown it and it's still struggling. I think something might still be eating the seeds. And in the corner we've got a pond which is part of our pest control system. It keeps down the slugs and the snails. We've got frogs in there. You can see that one there sitting on top of some frog spawn. They're just in the mating season now, so they're laying all their frog spawn. There'll be lots of tadpoles there soon. We do need to clean that out. We need to get some fresh water in there. You can see it's got a whole green colour. It tends to get less green in summer when you get all the plants growing up and shading it out. But there's quite a lot of frogs in there. There's probably about 3 or 4 adult frogs. Last year there was at least 30 babies. I don't know how many have survived to this year. We'll find out later in the year when they start moving around more and they come out of their semi-dormancy kind of hibernation period. But they basically keep on top of a lot of the pests in this polytunnel, and they can actually venture outside if they want, but they generally don't. They normally just stay in here because it's warm and humid and there's plenty of bugs for them to eat, and of course the pond is here as well. So I was going to make this as one long video, but it looks like the video is going to be a bit too long for that now, so I'll be making this into 3 parts. This is the first part, which is just giving you a general overview of the garden and the polytunnel, and so the next video I'll be talking about seeds, and I'll be sowing lots of seeds into individual pots. And that video should be uploaded one day after this one, and then there'll be a third part to this video which will be in about 2 days time, and that'll be about sowing seeds into the beds inside the polytunnel and also sowing out my pea, monge 2 and broadbean plants.